to your question. I think there's both, depending on the case-by-case basis. Sometimes it's good to start on one idea, and sometimes it's, you also create a lot of other ideas while you're working on that idea. So it's not always just one patent. It becomes like 30 patents over the period of 15 years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Kurt Becker from New York University, co-chairing this session, and I'm calling on Jennifer West to tell us how to involve STEM students in the innovative process.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm coming from the perspective that we're inventing all these great technologies. You know, I've had 18 patents. It's led to 2 startup companies and 8 other licensing deals. But all of those things are going to become obsolete. We need to have the continuous stream of innovation so that we can advance technology, address problems in our world over time. And to be able to have that stream of innovation, we need to think about how to best foster that in our students. So when we think about wanting to have students who are going to be capable of innovation, we can look at characteristics that we want to be sure to instill in them during their education. Whether we're talking about freshmen, undergraduates, graduate students, all the way through postdocs, we can be tailoring our activities and our interactions with students to try and promote some of these. So creativity, technical competency, sometimes efforts to really infuse lots of team projects and opportunities for creativity and innovation come at the expense of making sure that technical competencies are sufficiently developed. We need to make sure that those are balanced because the students do have to have the skill sets to be able to apply to innovation. I think one of the hardest things to instill in our students is courage, risk-taking, and resilience. They need to be taught to fail. Most of our students prior to entering college have not really had that experience of failing in their lives. So we're selecting for a very successful group of students, and we need to let them know that it's okay to take these risks that might lead to failure and how to learn from those failures and iterate so that you can come up with the effective solution in the end. There needs to be time for reflection. Students need to learn about the real issues facing our world so that they can start to come up with ideas for these. And students need to learn to work effectively in teams and be collaborative because most of the biggest problems are going to require multiple inventors working together to come with solutions. And so in thinking about how to accomplish some of these, so I think that one of the things is that mentors for students make a huge difference. And again, running all the way from freshmen through postdocs. So these are kind of the 2 significant mentors I've had in my life. So I started working in Bob Langer's lab as an 18-year-old kid. I spent 3 years there as an undergraduate, and that was an incredibly formative experience. You know, this was, for the students in the room, this was before the internet, right? So most of us, it was a different world then, and if you came from a family and, you know, a place of growing up where you weren't exposed to science and technology and innovation, you didn't necessarily know what these career paths looked like. You couldn't Google it and find out about it. And so coming in, this was not a career path that had even ever occurred to me. I knew you could be a doctor, I knew you could be a lawyer, right? I didn't know a lot of other, you know, teacher, didn't know a lot of other career paths. And so this wasn't something I necessarily set out to do coming out of high school, but instantly moving into that environment where students and postdocs and faculty were working together and really trying to innovate to solve pressing problems in medicine was so exciting that I really instantly knew that this was what I wanted to do. And so it was an environment where I was able to develop deep technical skills, really have the freedom to innovate and be creative, and also had a truly supportive environment around me. And I think that's important that our students get exposure to those kinds of experiences so that they can mature into people who can really innovate for our world. And then Jeff Hubble was my next mentor, again is very highly innovative, provided a lot of freedom for his students to try out new and crazy ideas, and was someone who really supported the idea that, you know, some of these ideas are going to fail, and that's okay. We want to really push the envelope, and when you want to be at the very cutting edge, you don't really know what the right answers are going to be, and you're going to have to do some things that are wrong. The other thing that Jeff would tell his students was that if we were working on something that was a potential cure for a disease, something that could impact humanity in some way, that it was actually our moral responsibility to seek patents for that work. With the idea being that if we came up with something like the cure for cancer and just published it, that it would never be commercialized because no one would be willing to invest in going through the manufacturing and FDA testing without the patent rights. And I think many students come in with a preconceived notion that patenting and startup is all kind of something we do for the money, that it's not something that we do for the good of humanity. And I think Jeff really worked to instill in his students the idea that seeing things all the way through translation was really one of our responsibilities as scientists. So this is some of the students I mentor. So I've had, you know, a good track record of invention and seeing things through to commercialization, but over the past couple of decades, I've had 47 PhD trainees come through the lab, over 150 undergraduates come through the lab, and when I look at this group of people who are still early in their career, these 47 prior PhD trainees, since leaving my lab, have generated over 100 patents of their own and 8 startup companies. So, and then these people, many of them are now faculty at different universities, and they're training another subsequent generation. And so I think passing on this spirit of innovation and invention to our students and seeing it go generation to generation is very important. So I've mentioned the idea of going from freshmen to postdocs. This is an example from my prior department. I was at Rice University for 17 years, and we developed a freshman design program. And so the idea was to take students who were at the very beginning of their educational experience, had not yet developed any real engineering skills, but to engage them in solving real-world problems, to give them the ability to develop some of those skills that we wanted to see. Creative solutions, risk-taking, had to work in collaborative teams. So we felt that working with these youngest students gave us a chance to instill these ideas, these characteristics very early, and allow them then to have the whole 4 years to develop. So we had a variety of very interesting real-world problems over the years that our students worked on. They ranged from giraffe feeders for the Houston Zoo, adaptive athletic equipment for Special Olympic athletes, and then this example here was working with a young man who was starting college. The young man in the purple shirt has osteogenesis imperfecta, and so he does quite well getting around in his wheelchair, but as he was starting college, he felt that one of the issues he was facing was dependence on other people for reaching and grasping things and retrieving things that might be dropped. And so working with the freshman design team, they came up with a robotic arm that attached to the back of Dee's wheelchair and allowed him to reach out and pick up objects and bring them back to his wheelchair so that he was much less dependent on others to help him get around the university and deal with his day-to-day life. So this project, I think, really engaged these students. I think all of our projects did, but this one in particular was one where I think these students had an immense sense of the impact of their work, the impact of their ideas. They went through many iterations of prototyping before coming up with the final working model that was given to the client. But I think that this was a truly life-altering experience for this group of students. So I think that making sure that our students are addressing real-world problems is imperative to retaining them in this space and for encouraging them to be real innovators. I think also when we want students to be working in kind of this new paradigm where we want them really working on projects in collaborative teams, that we need to rethink what our classroom spaces look like. So this is an example of a space at Duke University called the Foundry, where you can see it set up so that we can have teams of students working on project-based coursework, and they can work very effectively in their teams and have lots of resources around them. There's 3D printers, machine shops, all of these things available to them so that they can really be working on new types of solutions to problems that they work on. So we also, for these students, have ability to turn projects into startup companies that students launch. So we have a program called the Melissa and Doug Entrepreneurs Program, and that's allowed a number of our undergraduate students to take ideas that are developed in the Foundry, in their teams, and turn them into new startup companies. So there have been over 50 startup companies coming from engineering undergraduate students over the last 5 years through this program. So this is one of our students, Sunjata Joyal. She was featured in Glamour magazine last year as one of the College Women of the Year. And she was part of this Melissa and Doug Entrepreneurs Program and was able to start a company. It was looking at some women's health products to be deployed in India. She developed manufacturing plants in India for this. Has been incredibly successful in seeing something through from a design project through to commercialization space. And I think that when we look at our biomedical engineering students, that we've seen many things deployed from student design projects into global health technology space, and that the regulatory environment makes it a little bit easier there for students to see their ideas come to fruition and have real impacts on people. And so hopefully, that's one of the things that will drive our next generation of innovators. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. We have time for one or two comments or questions for the speaker. If there are none, thank you very much again.